Hey guys, Lukasz here. Today we're going to do some street photography, and I'm going to talk about the two kind of fundamental approaches that you can do for street photography, and that is hunting versus fishing. I like to do both, and beyond just the basic concepts, those two basic concepts, I also want to talk about my settings for both and which settings I think work or don't work, at least for me. All right? Of course, before that, please like the video and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below if you want to open up a discussion about some of the things we talk about today. All that helps us to grow this channel, and that support is very welcome, and then you'll be able to see more content like this. One last thing, if you share your photos on social media from your GR, please use the tag shootgr_ and your city name. All right, so we're here in a spot that I like to use for fishing, but first I just want to talk about what do I mean by fishing. Well, fishing is very simply where you pick a spot, you pick a composition that you think is going to be good, and then you fish. You just wait for the fish to come, which is the subjects to pass by, right? Very simple. So, if the video was just about that, it would be over right now. But I'm also going to talk about my settings for this and how, I optimize my chances of catching the fish, so to speak, okay? We'll talk about hunting later. We'll do the fishing stuff first, okay? So, first I just want to show you kind of the spot that I'm looking at, like why am I, that'll help, explain why I'm using the particular settings that I'm using. But for example here, and in general, there's a lot of these red pillars all around me, as you can see. And I just like this environment. I like the gray and the red, especially on this kind of gloomy, overcast day. And, there's, on a sunny day also, there'd be nice shadows here, whatever. It's just an environment that has some graphical intensity to it. So before I talk about the most important thing, which is the focus, because the way you focus these photos is what's going to change depending on your strategy and your approach. But first, just generally about settings. So like right now, it's very bright out here. I have plenty of light, so I'm going to go to f8. And I'm using aperture mode with auto ISO, so I don't have to worry about those other two settings. And I'm using a pretty fast shutter speed of 1/250 for my minimum shutter speed in the ISO setting. So that way, basically, anybody walking through this at a normal speed will be sharp. They will be frozen in action, okay? That's true whether I'm hunting or fishing, so that's kind of a moot point. That's always true for me for street photography. I like to have the shutter speed pretty fast. On a 1/250, if somebody's running, they will probably be a little bit blurry, but I don't expect anyone to run through here. So more importantly than those settings, which kind of glossed over, but again, f8, 1/250 shutter speed, and then auto ISO, okay? But more important than that is the focus mode. So there are two ways to do it. Either I can use autofocus, or I can use manual focus or snap focus, really on the RICOH. I wouldn't use the regular manual, I would use snap focus. So let's talk about autofocus first. I like to keep my autofocus on the, I believe it's called the focus pinpoint AF mode, pinpoint AF. So I like to have the little tiny focus point, and then I can move it around, and then here we go, here's actually a guy. I can either move it around myself, or I can focus and recompose, right? So focus and recompose means that I would maybe keep the focus point in the center, focus where I think the people are going to be, and then let them walk through that space, right? Now, it's tricky to focus onto empty air where there is no person at the particular moment, right? So for example, in this scene, what I might do is I say, okay, I want to get the person, so I'm going to leave the camera here and I'm going to demonstrate with myself just to be very clear. So I want the person to be here, let's say, right? Between this pillar and the wall. So I want to focus somewhere there. Now I can't focus on the person if they're not there, right? That's impossible. So instead what I would do is I would focus on some other element that I think will be in the same depth of field, right? And now because I'm using f8, I have a very deep depth of field. I forgot to say which camera I'm using. I'm using the GR3X today, which has a native, actually 26mm lens. We call it a 40 because of the conversion to full frame, but it's a 26mm. So a 26mm lens at f8 has a very large depth of field. So therefore, if I focus, for example, on the wall at about the distance where I think the people are going to be, then I can expect them to be in the photo, even if I move the camera a little bit, right? It won't really make a difference. So I'm going to focus there, and then I can either focus in the middle and then move the camera, or I can get my framing first, then move the focus point with the touch screen, and then focus, at that point, and then of course wait for somebody to walk through. And that is the fishing part. Oh, here we go. Beautiful, lovely. and we'll get her there and there and there. And I took a bunch. I took some when she was a little closer than my ideal distance and a little farther, because again, I'm on f8 and I'm confident that that DOF is deep enough that that person will fit in there anyway. And of course, if I was on f2.8, I would have to be a little bit more discerning and more careful about that exact distance. But that's how I would fish. I would pick my focus position using the autofocus system, and then I would hold the button down halfway, you know, the focus point turns green and locks the focus. One last little tip on that point: if you're fishing, you want to be really ready that when the fish are there, you're going to catch them, right? So you don't want to miss a shot because you're messing with focus. So it's very important that you pre-focus, and then I'm holding this button halfway down, which I think most people who own a GR know that works that way. Oh, here we go. Let me take a photo of this dude. Okay, I'm not getting the most mind-blowing subjects. What I really want is somebody wearing red to match the scene, but well, whatever. We're not going to, you know, wait for necessarily the ideal person today. And yeah, sure enough, that is tack sharp. So, of course, we got to pre-focus. We can hold the button halfway down and get the green focus point. And I even if you point the camera away from the scene, so if I pre-focus, I can hold the camera like this. I'm still holding it halfway, and I can just look casual. And then when the person shows up, bam, I'm ready to shoot, right? Because I'm still holding it halfway, and the focus is still at that distance. But more than that, what if, as the person's coming through the scene, I want to take 3 or 4 photos in a row? I don't have to focus each time. Then this is going to be very hard to show on the camera over here. But as I take a photo, so maybe we can get a little close up here, even if it's not so clear. But as I take a photo, the photo is snapping, and I'm not fully releasing this. I'm going back to the halfway position, which means you see the focus point stays green, and I don't have to focus the next shot. Okay? I do that all the time. I like to call that ninja autofocus, which is just a corny way of calling it, but I just need to call it something because I don't know what else to call this. But basically, you never let go fully of the shutter release, and your focus point will stay locked, and this is extremely useful. Now, last bit about settings, because some of you might be screaming into the screen right now and saying, Lukasz, what about snap focus? Why don't you use snap focus? That's what it's for on the GR. And it's like, I got you. I know I can use snap focus too. So of course, another thing I can do is I can turn on snap focus. I can choose a distance. So I've set my GR up so that when I press the FN button, it turns snap focus on and off. And when I press the ISO button, I can choose the distance. That's just how I like to do it, but you can do it another way. Now, 3.5 meters is what I like to generally keep it on because I find that to be most useful. But right now, that's more than 3.5 meters away. That's about 5 meters away. So I'm going to put the distance on 5 meters. And then, of course, I can do the full press snap where you like mash the button down really fast. But since I'm fishing, this is the point of this video, is that because I'm fishing, I don't want to have to mash it down fast. That's something we're going to do when we're talking about hunting. For fishing, I want to just have snap focus on all the time. So I've mapped the FN button to turn snap on and off and just lock it on. So basically, I'm using snap focus, and I could press this button as slow or as fast as I want, and it will snap to 5 meters, which I believe is appropriate for that same distance roughly that we were using autofocus for before. Now, I don't think I'm going to wait for another person to come to demonstrate it to you guys. We'll do it in another spot, but that is the totality of the settings that I use. To be really honest, more often than snap focus for this kind of fishing situation, I would do the auto pre-focus that I've demonstrated, where I focus on a particular spot and I hold the button halfway, because that gives me the flexibility to quickly change at a moment's notice to say, you know what, actually I want to pre-focus on some other spot. Whereas with snap, then you have to change your distance and you have to sort of think about it, and you're also not quite as precise because the snap distances are 5 meters, 3.5 meters, which they added in the recent firmware, which it was a great addition, because after 5 it's 2.5, and that's actually a huge difference. Whereas with the autofocus, like auto pre-focus method that I was talking about and demonstrating, you can be extremely precise. You can create a zone anywhere you want in a scene, especially one like this with a lot of depth. All right, let's go to a couple more spots just to show how this works. I'm not going to talk about the settings again, but we'll just shoot a couple photos. All right, let's get going. All right, so we're at another spot that I like that we're going to do some fishing at. All right, so we're going to go up here. Yeah, now there is an ideal case of a photo, you know, with like something that, because right now this is an okay scene, but I feel like there could be more to it. Like we could throw something in here, so if I'm lucky, something else will come, and that's what I'm really fishing for. And I might have some old photos that I've taken here that look pretty good. We'll see if I can look through my archive and throw them up on the screen right now. But in any case, maybe what I'm waiting for now is an interesting car or somebody coming down these stairs, just something that adds a little bit of interest to this scene, which is already kind of interesting, but not 100%. And again, the whole time I'm blabbing to you guys right now, I am holding, just like I said before, I'm holding the shutter button down halfway. I'm pre-focused at the distance of, the people down there. And I don't need to worry about focus, basically. I'm still holding it the whole time. It's just like become an instinct for me just to hold it down halfway. So for fishing, that is I think the most useful thing. More important than regular autofocus, than tracking focus, and even more important to me than snap focus. It's like an instant custom zone, basically. There's a bike coming through. Oh, here's a lady with a cool hat coming through on a bike. She might be a nice counterpoint to these guys. She was going quite fast. I probably should have sped my shutter up for that. Yeah, pretty motion blurred, but whatever. It gets the point across. All right, let's go to another spot. All right, guys, so one more spot. We went over here to this kind of busier, more kind of, gritty area. And here, what I want is to get somebody lined up with that explosion in the background. And so for this, we can use snap focus, or we can use the pre-focus method that I already demonstrated. And I think the hard part is going to be getting just one person. Well, that one's not bad. And so you see, I find snap focus to be a little bit tricky here because things are far away. I don't know exactly how many meters that is, but maybe if I just pre-focus on the explosion background itself, and this truck is going to stop right in front of what I'm shooting. All right, so show's over, guys. That's it. All right, so we did some fishing. Now we're going to do some hunting, and the rain's kind of starting to pick up, but I think we can get some hunting in before we get totally rained out. And so, just like before, I have the same decision. Either I can use snap focus, I can use possibly full press snap, or I can pre-focus and shoot. Now, for example, when I'm hunting, some stuff is not moving, like this scene, where I can just shoot it, right? But sometimes things are moving where actually the snap focus is a little bit more reliable. Now I can of course use full press snap, as I've said, but I kind of gravitate away from it, and I'd rather do what I said earlier when we were talking about fishing and just turn snap focus on by using the FN button on the back of the camera. And then I just have, snap focus enabled, and I just know that this shot is going to be snap or not snap. So like, see, this is a snap shot, although it wasn't really necessary. Let's go back here. Because there was nothing moving there, I could have just focused that. And right now, by the way, I'm on f4. And you might be wondering, how am I judging the distance? Well, I like to use the 3.5 meters, the one they added recently with the most recent firmware update, because I find 3.5 meters to just be like very easy to gauge, so like it's about there. It's just like a very natural distance for me for some reason. I just sort of get where 3.5 meters is. I don't know why. 5 feels a little far, 2.5 is too close, especially for the 40. So yeah, let's see here. I like this scene, and again, you see like this scene, does it really even need to be snap focused? Not really. I could just normally focus it because there's nothing moving. So even when I'm hunting, which means walking around and looking for moments like that, I'm not necessarily using snap. You'd think that that would be the natural go-to because it's fast. But even when you're doing this kind of walking around, hunting sort of mode, you're not necessarily reacting quickly to things. Sometimes things happen slowly anyway. You still have plenty of time. But I do try to be prepared. So I do keep my snap focus distance always set to the one I think I'm going to use, which, like I said, these days is 3.5 meters. Since they've added that, I'm using that all the time because it just makes more sense for me. So it's not so much like to explain to you guys today what the difference is between fishing and hunting, because honestly, that's pretty straightforward. It's more about how I utilize the RICOH to do fishing and hunting. So here we go, snap focus on, and there we go. So that was a good example of turning on snap beforehand, knowing where he's going to be. There was probably no way I would have been able to actually autofocus on him and shoot and frame him the way I wanted all in the same time that quickly. So the snap focus function was really, really helpful there. That's a cool scene over there, that sushi chef or whatever standing at the end there, right? We're back to this bomb explosion thing, and even that same scene might work as a hunting style shot rather than a, a fishing shot. And here, you see here, I'm not gonna try to do snap focus or anything. I'm just gonna focus normally because there's plenty of time. All right. guys, we'll end it here. I think I've illustrated the point. Two different kind of schools of photography, which honestly you're going to use both. Sometimes you're going to fish, sometimes you're going to hunt. You know, I'm making it sound all fancy with these terms, but I didn't make them up. I've heard other people call them the same thing. Basically, I fish when I find a spot that I really like and I want to sit there for a while. And I usually am just hunting. I'm usually just wandering around. But in regards to the GR, that's how I utilize it. And it really comes down mainly to the focus modes. The shutter speed and like the aperture, that's going to vary on the light. It's going to vary on how fast subjects are going through. Like if you're trying to get bicycles, you're going to do a faster shutter speed. If you're trying to, you know, whatever. But the focus settings, I think, that's the main thing today, and that's what I try to focus on. So, no pun intended. So, yeah, choose what's best for you. Again, I've made my case. I think you get what I like, but ultimately experiment, and whatever you like, use that. And let me know in the comments, how do you do your hunting and your fishing? Do you prefer one or the other? I would love to hear from you guys what you think about that. All right, so thank you so much for watching. Please like the video, leave a comment as I already said, subscribe, all that, and tag your photos with shootgr_ and your city name, and so we get to see them on Instagram and other social media. All right, catch you guys in the next video.